Hey team, good morning. I'm not usually up this early. It's 7. I commonly sleep until 8, so I think I look a little tireder than I normally do. Um, I guess I guess I had things on my mind this morning, and as I have been saying lately, uh, this video may be composed of not fully fleshed out ideas, which I guess is probably a continual state for a lot of people. People talking without fully fleshing out their ideas. It's a valid way to operate. It's just not the way that I normally operate, so I'm kind of not comfortable operating in that space. But I kind of do like the idea of just letting things coalesce as I'm speaking, kind of trying to remain in that I wouldn't call it a flow state. Flow state means something other than what I'm trying to say. But yeah, just like going with the flow, I guess that's what I want to say. And when I made my video yesterday, I had a lot of thoughts kind of bumping around in my head, and not all of them presented themselves as I was recording the video, and I'm okay with that. That's kind of the direction that I'd like to go with these videos. But today, I guess this morning, I was thinking, instead of sleeping, thinking about the video that I made yesterday, and I was saying I don't know what it's going to take to show that rejection and that punishment towards especially Trump, but the government in general, which is allowing them, with this lack of punishment is allowing them to be amoral, and we need to start having more punishment and judgment, punishment coming from judgment. And I said I don't know what it's going to take, and I ended up I don't know if it'll take murder, and I think that was a big word, and I think that kind of bothered me that came out of my mouth, which is probably kind of where like streamers are. I'm kind of surprised how Hassan Piker has like exploded on the scene. I didn't hear anything about him ever, and then all of a sudden it seemed like everybody was talking about him, and how he should be included in the Democratic coalition, or he shouldn't. The offensive things that he has said, and I think that when you are streaming, just saying things in the moment, not giving yourself a chance to think through them or to sleep on them, to really consider how strongly you feel that way. You don't have an opportunity to have discuss it with some other humans that might be a little more level-headed, or might just have a different perspective, and be as irrational, or as what word am I looking for? When you don't think things through, as brazen, maybe, as talk to others that aren't as brazen as you, as cavalier, then yeah, those you tend to say those things. And I think that it's really unfortunate that we don't have more people that are willing to say, you know what, I thought about this again and I take it back, or this is a little more nuanced than I was recognizing it to be, and I think I need another take on it, or something like that. I guess that's kind of what I'm doing this morning, and And so, yeah, I'd like to take another shot at the concept of what's it going to take to push back on the government, to demand that they act by morals that more people value, to demand that they actually do their job in responding to the will of the people, the needs of the people, instead of neglecting them and abusing them. I mentioned Katie Fang yesterday. That's one of the angry podcasters that I listen to. I mean, everybody is getting more angry, and I think that is a good thing. That the more that people are angry and the more that we see others expressing angry feelings, that the more that will go around, the more it will feel acceptable and appropriate, and the more the populace in general will pursue that anger. Another angry podcaster that I listen to that I think might actually be angrier than Katie Fang is Legia Miller. I mentioned her, how she says bye-bye at the end, which feels very incongruous with the anger that she expresses during her casts, or whatever they're called. And then at the end, she ends with this kind of cheery, poppy bye-bye. But yeah, actually, I don't know. Maybe her last few videos hasn't included that, but I'd have to go back and look. But her last few videos do seem to be angrier. She's not just giving. I mean, she's always angry, but and I'm sure that she's not always angry in life. Just in these podcasts where she's actually commenting on the government, which is very. I mean, even I have said this is a topic that should be very angry. But the topics of her podcasts in the last few episodes have been about things like tax resistance, which is a way of protest. Have been about riots, which is a form of protest. And one of the things that she mentioned was that the right side of the spectrum, of the political spectrum, tends to be violent against people, and the left side of the political spectrum tends to be violent against businesses or objects. Things like riots. It might attack cars, which are not businesses but are objects, but are not people. Whereas the right side of the spectrum tends to attack people. And I was talking to a friend of mine saying, mentioning this, and she wondered about statistics, if there were any factoids that gave details on this. Well, I'm not sure about percentages, but I have seen for myself in the news that violence is against people on the right side of the spectrum and against objects from the left side of the spectrum. And I think of police violence against people. I mean, police aren't going to be burning cars, but they do. There have been a lot of stories of white policemen killing black people, and there's a whole movement of Black Lives Matters that resulted from that because black people are getting killed. January 6th was against Congress. I mean, did they cause objects destruction? Yes, they did, but their objective was to attack people, to stop them from validating the vote, approving the vote, finalizing the vote for President Biden. And I mean, those are just two examples. I think I had another one floating around in my head this morning, but I'm not going to take the time to hunt it down. So, Vice President Cheney shot somebody in the head. I don't know. No, that was an accident, but purportedly. It's just hard to know what to believe anymore. You just gotta always add, apparently or purportedly or reportedly or something. It's like, especially with politicians, it's like, can you believe anything that they say? I mean, this is kind of going back to the assassination attempt in Butler. I actually have a name to put on the city on the assassination attempt. Maybe my memory will improve now that I feel like I have a reason to put names on things for your sake, for the sake of this, so that I don't say, oh, that thing that happened somewhere. I'm like, oh yeah, if I'm gonna be recording these videos, I should probably have names to put on things. But so that assassination attempt at Butler, it's like, was it staged? There was another gun incident at the White House Correspondents' Dinner. I think that's what it was called, last night. Apparently, a couple people got shot, including the person that was invading with guns. But yeah, that's like, is this also staged? Like, the people with guns tend to be Trump supporters instead of opposers, and gun violence and human violence tends to come from the right side of the spectrum. We don't have a lot of information about it. Apparently it was a teacher from California. Well, if he's from California, that's a very blue state, so it must be a Democrat. But, which is what would be claimed, which is probably why they're putting that information out there, that he's from California, making a big deal about that. The shooter from Butler, I think that it's been talked about where he's from, but they didn't really make a big deal about it. But if he's from California, if it's a Democrat, then we got to make a big deal about that. And everything is about spin, and everything is about saving face. And it's okay to lie, and it's okay to kill. Violence against people. Yet again, somebody was killed at that Butler display. Do I even want to call it an attempted assassination? I guess that's how strongly I'm feeling like it was just a setup, but somebody actually died. And that was violence against humans. And if it was a conspiracy, because people would be conspiring, if it was a conspiracy, if it was a setup, then that person dying was like a worthy sacrifice. It's a sacrifice I'm willing to make. I'm okay if somebody dies in order to make this look real, in order to make this look like my life was actually in danger, and I still stood up in front of a still insecure audience. Like, if there was a second gunman, then he just stood up and gave him a great target again. And that doesn't make sense. And that's part of the reason. That's not my primary reason. My primary reason was just the 1/4 of an inch grazing of his ear that is now completely healed. Is just too convenient. But I was watching the Young Turks for the first time ever. They had a video on this, and they gave a very compelling point, how some photographers were ushered around to take a picture, ushered around to the exact location where they could take a picture of Trump with the American flag behind him while he holds up his bloody fist. This is a developing crime scene. The president of the United States' life is in danger, and they have a photo op in front of the flag. They take time for that. They, when they should have, and they do eventually hurry him out, but they take a moment to all move away from him so that there's a clear opportunity for a photograph of him bloodied, holding up his fist with a flag behind him. And that just feels so, again, convenient. It just feels so intentional, planned, choreographed. And in this Young Turks video, they show a video from another news program where they're pointing this out, that these photographers that are about to take this picture with the flag in the background, they stop at one location to take pictures, and then they get moved over to this other location, which would align the president with the flag. And it feels extremely choreographed. And somebody died there. It feels, it feels so choreographed. And it shouldn't. If it was a real assassination attempt, it would not be choreographed. Anyway, I didn't mean to go on about this long, but this goes back to say, like, how can you trust anything that they say or do? How can you trust anything that you see? I mean, it used to be that you could Photoshop things and be like, I don't know if it's true. There used to be a saying that was something like picture or it didn't happen. And now it's like, how many pictures are real? And deep fakes were the predecessor to AI slop. And now it's like, even a video doesn't prove, how hard. You used to be able to doctor photos with that program that I just barely mentioned. It's gone now. I've moved on with Photoshop. But now, you used to be able to doctor photos with Photoshop, but now you can doctor videos. You don't even have to doctor videos. You can create videos just with a sentence prompt. How can you trust that anymore? And I think that we'll move past this. I'm not losing hope. It may take a generation or two, but I think that we will either develop the ability to tell what's human and what's not, or develop technology to determine what's real and what's not, or we will just stop believing the news. I mean, we haven't, the news hasn't always existed. Mass media hasn't always existed. And we are an evolving species, maybe not so much physical, but definitely social. And when we developed things like mass media, like newspapers, or like radio, or like television, people learned how to use that to manipulate each other. There's whole industries that are founded on this, whole ad campaigns that are used to deceive each other. I was watching Mindfield, which is Vsauce, like they don't make those anymore. But I was watching this old episode, and he was talking about bacon, and how bacon is the quintessential breakfast food. And he talks about that the reason that is because of marketing campaigns. And I think that it has stood the test of time, that plenty of things get marketed and don't become quintessential in a certain aspect of life. So maybe bacon belongs there, but it was started with a marketing campaign. I remember my mom talking about this commercial that she would hear in the background. She was in the other room, but she could hear the television, and it was a commercial for this kid's product, and they said, it goes squish, or something like that. It was like some kind of toy for the bath or something, and it goes squish. And she said that from the other room, it sounded a whole lot like they said George Bush. So this was, like when George Bush was running for president. But But subliminal messaging is a thing. Like, it exists. You can see lots of examples of it. So our mass media has gone through evolutions. We start with papers and go to radio and go to television and go to the internet and now people are becoming more and more skeptical and saying, I don't know what I can believe. Well, you know what? That is probably going to lead to another social evolution. And maybe it will lead to a social evolution where we do things in person more, because artificial intelligence can't fake an in-person interaction. So I'm okay with the evolution. I'm not distressed by AI. I don't know how long it will take before we respond to to this new multimedia. But I think that it will eventually happen. And yet, politicians can still lie in person, and so we still need to learn to be skeptical of them. And I guess we've had politicians for a long, long time, and we still are not skeptical enough of them. And maybe that's because in-person interactions are a lot more ingrained in our genetics than mass media. I think that we have the ability to respond to mass media and make changes in our behaviors and in our media, etc. And even in our legislation, like, hey, there's the freedom of press, but there are situations where we're able to regulate that press, and we do, and we can moving forward. We just need to be able to respond to it appropriately. I still haven't gotten to the topic that I started this for. And I'm surprised that I actually talked this long, because I was like, oh, this might be a really short video, just refuting my thoughts from last night. Reframing my thoughts from last night. And instead, I've got on all these side ideas and haven't gotten to that yet. And I'm already over 20 minutes. But yeah, so I'm not sure exactly where I was going with the idea that we need to be more skeptical of our politicians. But yeah, it might find it more difficult to be skeptical of politicians, because that's a little more part of our DNA than things like the media. Lying politicians. Can we even trust that this gunman at the White House Correspondents' Dinner last night was not just another stooge, another setup? I feel as skeptical of the gun. Actually, you know what? I feel more skeptical of this administration than I feel of AI slop. Because AI slop actually tends to be based on like large language models that pull stuff from the internet, and stuff from the internet is a mixture of truth and lies, is a mixture of positive and negative, is a mixture of right-wing and left-wing political thinking, and the stuff from this administration is not a mixture. It's very much one-sided. Yeah. So I think I trust AI slop more than I trust this administration, or anything that happens around this administration. It's funny how I think that at least I, have been indoctrinated to trust the government, to trust even the police, and then there's Trump. So if I hear something coming from President Trump, then I don't trust it. But then when a news report says something like, the White House says, like I saw a report about how there's been a bunch of scientists either murdered or dying or going missing. And these are like high-level scientists that have to do with like space-age technology. And I've actually seen a few videos since I saw this headline. I've seen a couple of videos of people talking about it, but that does feel very conspiracy theory-ish. It's like, yeah, there's something weird going on here, but they really don't have much to go on. So, although I have been talking about conspiracy theories and repeatedly saying, I'm not a conspiracy theorist, my claims to not be a theorist and my speech talking about theories might seem to kind of contradict each other. But here's a conspiracy theory that isn't partisan. But I also don't feel like there's a whole lot of information to go off of. Nothing that's really standing out that's, I mean, for one reason, there's not much of a motive with the whole shooting of the slightest grazing on the ear being too convenient. That's got a clear motive. Like, somebody can definitely benefit. Trump can definitely benefit from looking like somebody wanted to assassinate him and almost assassinated him, and then he puts this big old bandage on his ear, and everybody else puts bandages on their ear. Not everybody else, but his supporters put bandages on their ears to like build some kind of momentum, to make him look like some kind of a war hero, which he is definitely not. I mean, the whole Bone Spurs thing to get him out of the Vietnam War was a lie. Why shouldn't an ear grazing also be a lie? I don't know. He's just been a shyster his whole life, a liar his whole life, and I don't see why people should trust anything. No, I should go the opposite of that. I see clear reasons why people should believe nothing he says. And yet people follow him blindly. Okay, what I wanted to talk about. Violence against objects or people. Violence against objects or people. So last night in my video, I said, I don't know what it's going to take. I don't think peaceful protest is going to get us there. Is it going to, even if we do 5 more? And another thing that Legia Miller pointed out in that video where she was talking about rioting was when she talked about Martin Luther King Jr. and how he was leading peaceful protests and million-man marches and filled the Washington Monument area, whatever, with protesters and silent, or not silent, but non-violent protests. And Legia Miller said that towards the end of his life, he started being more of the belief that violence was necessary, that non-violence wasn't getting them where they needed to go. And it was only when these movements start turning violent that change actually happens. And we can focus on the nonviolent aspect, and that's an important part of the process. But potentially another important part of the process is the violence. But murder, I think I jumped to that one too quickly. I think that there are a lot of things between nonviolent protests and murder that should be looked at first. So in one of the Legia's videos, she talks about tax resistance, I think is the term that she used. And it's being used for as like commentary rather than as just trying to dodge your taxes because you want to keep your money. It's like a form of protest. I think that the trouble with that one is that you don't get a mass of people with paying taxes because people don't pay their taxes together. If they did, then you might have a mass of people. You might get people bickering and complaining and forming into organizations and organized movements But we don't pay taxes together. We're not all gathered to be taxed as a group. We pay them individually, online, or through the mail, I suppose. But that probably makes it so that we're not going to have any momentum with tax resistance. It's just going to be individual people, unless we start tax resistance clubs, and they get bigger and bigger, and we start having rallies, tax resistance rallies, and conferences, which I suppose is a possibility, and maybe that's something that somebody, not me, should organize. I don't know. So another thing that I'm bad at, along with not being a very angry person, I'm not very charismatic, and it does take charisma to start and lead movements. So, what do you see this in Newsies, right? There's like Jack, what's his name? Christian Bale character, that he's the one with the charisma. He's the leader. And then you've got his the other main character that I don't even remember his name, because he's not the leader. He doesn't have the charisma. He's got the ideas. And the guy with the charisma needs the ideas guy, but it's the charisma guy that's the actual leader. Okay, so I'm not a charisma guy, which I recently realized. I heard the word Riz, and I was like, oh, this is an interesting word. Okay, I had no idea that it came from charisma. I put that together in my mind. I guess it could be wrong, but it logics. Anyway, because they mean pretty much the same thing. So charisma, yeah, I don't have that charisma to like lead a movement. I am more of a problem solver. I am more of an ideas guy. I don't come up with ideas out of thin air. I'm not a storyteller. I'm not an inventor. But I am a problem solver. I see what's going on in society, and then I am creative. And then I come up with ideas on how to fix that. And it may not be good ideas. I don't know. We'll have to see what happens. But yeah, like if tax resistance is going to go anywhere, there needs to be people together, a building momentum. And Legia, she has an audience, and she's able to get the idea out there, but that human in-person interaction, I think, is something that is going to be necessary for this. Just like with protests, our human in-person interaction leading movements. And maybe those movements might evolve into something that's more violent. When I went to the last No Kings protest, there was a person that was kind of heckling the protesters, driving in the parking lot close to the back of the crowd, with some loud music going on. I don't know what the music was. I can't remember if anybody said what it was. I think somebody might have said that it was rap music, but it wasn't. I don't think that it was like "I'm proud to be an American" or something like that. Because a lot of people had flags, and they probably would have taken the wrong message from that. They're like, "Yeah, they're supporting us because we're proud to be an American, where we are free," and we're protesting a fascist leader that is not promoting freedom and trying to stifle our media and our rights and stuff. But anyway, so some people in the crowd were annoyed by this person driving around. And there was even a person that kind of went over to the car that had the windows down. And one of the leaders of the protest had a blowhorn and started chanting while approaching the person. He was from afar, and so he was trying to go over there to diffuse any potential situation. And he was calling through the blowhorn, "Do not engage counter-protesters," or something like that. And he was just saying it over and over again as he was trying to approach and diffuse this situation. And finally, the person backed away from the car, and then the leader of the protest went and talked to him and said, you really need to not do this. Well, one of the focuses of the No Kings rallies is nonviolent protest, is peaceable gathering, which is supposed to be legal, right? Well, where does peaceable end? Obviously, riots aren't peaceable. But what about protests on freeways? Which is something that we haven't seen in the United States, but I have heard about happening in other countries. Shutting down economies by choking off the flow of transportation. People can't get to work. Trucks can't get to deliver their goods. It shuts down the entire economy. It's not violent, it's just standing in the road. Or is it violent? Is it violent against the economy? Which is an argument that the other side could make. It's not violent against people, but it is violence against businesses, which is from the left side, right? But it's not destruction of anything. So, I don't know. Does violence require destruction? In order to call something violent, does something have to be destroyed? But I don't know, maybe the economy is being destroyed. So nothing physical is being destroyed, but the economy is being destroyed. So, this would be a protest that's not completely peaceable, that's not completely nonviolent, but that's also not murder. There's definitely things in between. You might not be able to get mass tax resistance unless you start having conferences. And that wouldn't be illegal, right? To have a conference or a rally that's promoting tax resistance. I mean, that just seems super American. That goes back to our founding fathers. Tax resistance. That goes back to, I think a lot of people will say that the Boston Tea Party was tax resistance, and other people will say that, no, that's about something else. Historian, was it? I think it might have been Heather Cox Richardson that said, yeah, it wasn't about protesting British taxes. It was about protesting some kind of not a rebate, some kind of tax deferral or something like that was being given to this tea company. And the Americans were like, no, we need you to tax these tea companies. We need to fund our government or something like that. So it's a little more nuanced than just protesting taxes. But still, the whole taxation without representation, resisting stamp taxes. There's even though the Boston Tea Party may not be the prime example, but it might be the most famous example. But there are definitely examples from our founding that are resistance to taxes. And so, there's number one, there's freedom of speech, but then it's also like, is there anything more American than protesting taxes? Taxes without representation, because what's being done with these taxes, and this is the reason to resist taxation, is because our taxes. The President of the United States, Donald Trump, recently said that the only thing that the federal government has to do is wage war. We don't need to pay for daycare. We don't need to pay for Medicare. We can't pay for all these things. The states should take care of that. The only thing that the federal government has to do is wage war. And if that's the only thing that the federal government is doing, do I really want to give my tax dollars to the federal government? Now, that was a silly thing that he said in the moment, and I don't know if you asked him about other things like, well, with Donald Trump, don't you think that the government needs to pay for the interstate freeway as well? And he might say, oh well, yeah, of course we need to do that. Well, what about like paying government employees? You get paid. Congressmen get paid from tax dollars. Don't we need to do that as well? And he'd probably be like, oh yeah, okay, So I don't think that even he would believe that that the only thing that the federal government needs to do is wage war. But that is where his focus is right now. That is where he is wanting to put our dollars and asking Congress for more and more money to make that happen. That's not That's not where I want my tax dollars to go. Therefore, my taxation, my tax dollars are going to something that don't represent me. They're going to pay senators that are not doing their jobs. They're not representing the American people. The American people are saying, a third of the American people are disapproving of Congress, and yet Congress is still approving of Donald Trump. So they are not representing what the population wants. Taxation without representation. So yeah, I think that a rally to protest taxes, to focus on tax resistance as a form of protestation, that should be illegal and completely American. And maybe it is. I don't think anybody's done it yet, and I don't know how to do it. I don't have the charisma. I don't have the leadership, bone in me. I don't know. Maybe I do, and I just haven't discovered it yet. I've changed a lot over the last decade, and maybe that's another evolution for Hugo Jones. But we need to do something. Protesting on the freeways seems like a pretty good next step. I don't like the idea of destroying objects, of cars and businesses. Leach Miller talked about that too. He just said, is it sad? Yeah, it's sad that these things got destroyed. It's very troubling that businesses got destroyed that couldn't recover. Some businesses could rebuild. Some businesses couldn't. And they just disappeared because of rioters. And that doesn't seem fair. Why should small business owners, why should individuals, why should my car be destroyed? Because our government is doing something that's inappropriate, is abusing us. Okay, that's what I wanted to say. This video became a whole lot longer than I intended it to be. But it all flowed out of my brain into my mouth, and I am glad that I have an outlet, and I hope that this was meaningful to people that may or may not hear it. Like in my video I said yesterday, people don't even need to hear it. The energy is going out to the universe and to humanity. So yes, let's build this momentum. Let's meet in person. Somebody organize that. Who's got the Riz? Okay. Talk to you later. Bye.